With Sea of Thieves now released, I thought it would be an interesting idea to go through potential sea monsters that we could see down the line added to the game in future updates and possible DLC. We already know that the game has the legendary Kraken in it, and now post-launch I've got to experience it firsthand a few times for myself. Some claim that the Kraken is the largest sea monster, but is it real? Well, sightings off the coast of Norway and Greenland would suggest that it is, but did they actually see a Kraken? Sailors over the years gone by have claimed to see large squids that could grow as long as 50 feet, and marine biologists support these findings, but the Kraken itself, I'm afraid to say, is a mythical beast. But that hasn't stopped sailors from being scared just at the thought of it though. In fact, in Nordic folklore, which claims the Kraken would haunt the seas around Norway and Greenland, claims the Kraken would force vessels to capsize in order to eat the crew on board. Now, the idea of getting eaten alive by a large squid-like tentacle with a beak and teeth is quite an upsetting thought. In fact, I got gobbled by the Kraken a few times myself on my first encounter with it. In the game, the Kraken will pop up as a rare event just as you're sailing along. The seas will turn dark, your ship will stop, the audio will go all moody, and you'll start to see tentacles popping up out of the sea. Now you need to keep hitting the tentacles as much as you can with cannonballs, and the tentacle will retreat. If you don't do damage to the tentacles, then they're going to wrap around your ship and do some real damage. You need to hit them, even if it's just with your standard weapons, to get them to let go. Overall, I don't think the galleon is much of a challenge. Perhaps if the tentacles just wrapped around your ship regardless to make it harder, possibly. It's a bit underwhelming. Either way, with a full galleon crew, you shouldn't have too much difficulty taking out the Kraken and surviving. Maybe it should rock your ship around a bit. Perhaps not capsize it, but just rock it to make it a touch harder to hit those cannon shots. It is a pretty rare event though, but you can hear the Kraken from time to time, and rumour has it that if you sail towards the sounds, you're more likely and you stand more of a chance of encountering it, if that's what you seek. Okay, so we know the Kraken is in the game, we know how it works, but what about some other speculative sea monsters that we'll probably see down the line in Sea of Thieves? Well, I've got a range here for you. Let's take a look first at the Hydra. The Hydra comes from Greek mythology, and it's a multi-headed dragon-type beast that could grow back a pair of heads whenever one of them was cut off. One of the main stories that you may have heard is that the Hydra was killed by Hercules using sword and fire as the second of his 12 labours. Sadly for us, if the Hydra does appear in the game, then I'm sorry, but Hercules will be nowhere to be found, and defeating the beast will fall responsibility on ourselves. This thing looks insane, and honestly, even in Sea of Thieves, if this thing popped up its head, or heads, above the water, then you're definitely going to get more than a little bit worried. Of course, we have to bear in mind the feasibility of it. The Kraken, of course, is clearly technically possible. Its tentacles can reach over and grab your ship, so I see no reason why the Hydra wouldn't be possible too. That being said, the Kraken in the game doesn't have a head. It's just tentacles coming out of the sea, so maybe the Hydra could be more of a challenge. I think if you had to shoot its head with cannons, that could be pretty interesting, each monster adding a different challenge. Next up, Cthulhu, one of the Great Old Ones. The Great Old Ones, of course, being a group of unique, malignant beings of great power that reside in various locations on Earth. Cthulhu lies in a death-like slumber beneath the Pacific Ocean in his sunken city of Alya. He's a fictional monster created by horror writer H.P. Lovecraft. Cthulhu is incredibly large, and his face is full of tentacles. In fact, he looks a bit like Davy Jones from the Pirates of the Caribbean, except much bigger, scarier. Oh, and yeah, he's got wings, clawed hands, and some really scaly skin. Some of these sea monsters will give you nightmares, although it was created by a horror writer, so I guess that's to be expected. Could be a copyright issue, this one, but still a very cool beast nonetheless. Can you imagine if he just appeared in the water and then flew over your ship and landed in the water the other side and then just kept moving and flying around you, attacking you? That would be amazing. Perhaps you could damage his wings that would prevent him from flying. Maybe a beast like this could even attack you while you're on land too, searching an island for treasure. Moving on, we can't forget the Megalodon. I know, I have an obsession, but I mean, come on, we already have sharks in the game. I don't think it would be a stretch to see this giant shark creature make an appearance. The Megalodon was actually real though, and it's an extinct species of shark that lived millions of years ago. In 1973, Hawaiian ichthyologist John E. Randall estimated that the maximum length of the megalodon was around 43 feet long. Wow. But in 1990, marine biologist Patrick J. Shembry and Stephen Papson suggested that it could have been up to 90 foot long. Damn, either way, it's an incredibly large shark that you really don't want to encounter. In my mind, if it were in the game, I can see it swimming around a ship, creating a huge shadow as it goes. Perhaps it would slam into your ship, not capsizing it but smashing it around and causing damage. Maybe this beast would even hold you in place like the Kraken, but it would let you move around to try and get an angle to shoot at it. Honestly, the Megalodon I think is perhaps the easiest monster of all of them to put into Sea of Thieves. I'd love to see one jumping over a galleon, that would be incredible. Something similar in a lot of ways to the Megalodon though is Moby Dick, and this is a fictional monster based on a 1851 novel of the same name. Moby Dick was based on an actual whale called Mocha Dick who lived in the Pacific Ocean in the 19th century. Legend has it that he survived 100 encounters with ships before he was eventually killed, and Moby Dick was large, very powerful, and was able to wreck small ships with his fluke, which is basically his tail. Moby Dick was claimed to be the largest sperm whale ever to live and could have been larger than 90 feet in size. His head and jaws are so large that he can simply reach out of the water and crush a ship in his mouth. Now imagine seeing that in game for a second, that would be epic. Maybe you could even befriend Moby Dick too and ride around on it, or do something with the water spout to get up to a higher level. It seems like that kind of thing would actually fit in with the gameplay and art style of Sea of Thieves. You know what, screw that, what if you could get swallowed by Moby Dick and then you're inside this giant whale and then there's a quest or a puzzle inside the whale and you've got to go and get some treasure from inside its stomach and then fight your way out. Now that I could definitely get behind. Now the next one I found is a bit different. It's called Charybdis. It was a sea monster that 3 times a day would swallow a massive amount of water before belching it out again, creating a large whirlpool capable of dragging ships underwater. Some versions of this monster had it simply as a whirlpool itself, but either way, I think coming across this monster that created a whirlpool underneath you would make a hugely different challenge. Perhaps this time you aren't trying to damage it, but simply sail to survive. Again, this one is tricky because it vastly depends on if it's possible within the engine to do something like that. Of course we can't possibly know, but a whirlpool seems like a pretty interesting idea. Now I've left what I think is the best for last, and arguably the biggest, and fingers crossed I hope eventually this makes it into the game, and this monster is called the Leviathan. This beast is actually cited as a great sea monster in the Bible, and a quote from Isaiah 27:1 reads, "In that day the Lord with his sore and great and strong sword shall punish the Leviathan, the piercing serpent, even Leviathan the crooked serpent, and he shall slay the dragon that is in the sea." Pretty deep stuff. The Leviathan had the head of a dragon and could breathe fire, and it was of such immense size that legend says the sea would boil when it came to the surface. It also ruled over all other creatures in the sea. So a little pirate ship, well, child's play. Its skin is like a double coat of chainmail with overlapping scales, so swords and harpoons would simply bounce off. Honestly, I've no idea how you would even defeat such a creature if it was put into Sea of Thieves, but man, would I love to see it. I mean, look at it. Some of the art I found online is incredible. It looks insane. Imagine if you had to team up with, say, 3 other ships just to stand a chance. That would be so epic. You could even make it into a quest with a really good reward. If, say, it was a super rare occasion and it took 3 teams working together simply to stay alive, that could work. One thing that the game doesn't really have is fire damage. Doesn't really need to, so if a fire breathing monster was added, then I guess it would be cool to see your ship burning up a little bit and you've got to get buckets of water to put the fire out whilst also trying to do damage to the thing. Maybe the fire would just create holes like normal and then you'd see your sails burning, causing sail damage. That would be a nice feature. The Leviathan is just cool, and I hope that we see that sea monster in the game. So there we have it. There's actually an abundance of sea monsters that I think could be added to the game to make the seas just that little bit more treacherous. I mean, you've already got other pirates to deal with, right? But sea monsters, come on, it would just be awesome. And let me know down in the comments below which one you would like to see the most. If you enjoyed the video, give me a like. If you didn't, a dislike. Subscribe for more, and I'll see you in the next one.